Welcome back to the Trick Shift Garage. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the exhaust manifold on your 2007 to 2012 Nissan Altima with the 2.5 liter. So let's get started. Alright, so got the jack up as well as the jack stand in place. Always make sure you use the jack stand. You know, that way you're being safe. You don't want this thing to fall on you. Alright, so now that we got the engine cover off, we're going to go ahead and remove this intake track. And all you got to do is kind of lift up this side. There is a Phillips screwdriver on each side. Mine have actually seized, they like rusted completely shut. So you can actually kind of wiggle it out, hopefully without breaking it. Oh, there we go. See, there's a gap here, so you can actually squeeze it out without really turning the screws. All right, now that we got the tire off, and you should have a little plastic shroud here. There should be a couple plastic clips in place that you'd have to remove to get to it. I lost mine years ago, so I didn't have it there. But basically, once you take that off, then you'll have access to, up here is the tensioner pulley. Once you get down here, you're going to be looking for this pulley right here. So you got your crankshaft pulley, and then look directly to the right and up a little bit is your tensioner pulley. Okay, it's going to be a size 14 millimeter. And what you want to do is put, I got a ratcheting wrench here, but a long wrench or even a tensioner belt tool or tensioner pulley tool would do a trick. Make sure you have it on flat, and then you're going to rotate it clockwise as if you were tightening the bolt. And then from there, once you have it out enough, you just pull the belt off from the top here, like that. Okay, now that the belt's off, then you can relax it. And then from there, you'll just go around everything and let it fall out. Once you got everything off the bottom side, you really just have to get the alternator belt off here, and then you can just let it fall through the bottom. That's fine, it doesn't matter. If you can pull it out from the top, it'll work, but you don't have to. Just make sure you get it off the alternator, and then the belt here, you see, comes out completely. All right, so I forgot to do this, but we need to take off the battery, because I'm not trying to get electrical shock when I start touching this alternator. So once you get it loosened, it should just come right off, and then I just like to tuck it down there. Alright, so before we can go ahead and take the alternator off, we actually have to remove the coolant reservoir tank, the overflow tank. So all you have to do is take off this 10 millimeter bolt here. And then this guy, I believe, kind of slides out. There's like a little channel there. It kind of slides out, and then, so I'll show you. This part right here, there's a little metal bracket that actually slides into this. There's like a little cavity there it slides into. So just be wary of that. And then you can disconnect it from here or here. Personally, I think I'm just going to disconnect it here. And you just want to move it up. There you go. So the next step in this process is going to be to remove the alternator. And the alternator has two bolts. There's one here and one right down here. I think they're 14 millimeter, but I'm not sure. I have to take off this grounding, looks like a grounding strap. And we're gonna keep this wiring on. I'm gonna basically unbolt the alternator and throw it up here to get it out of the way, so that way I can access the one bolt that's way down here. All right, so the first step before you want to take these alternator bolts off is just go ahead and get some WD-40, and we're just gonna hit it with some of this. All right, and what you can also do, this is the back side of that bottom bolt. What I would do is go ahead and spray that there too. All right, so the next step is we're gonna take this grounding strap off, and it's a 10mm. All right, and then I'm gonna put the bolt back. That way I just don't lose it. I did the same here. This is for the actual engine cover. I still keep that on from time to time. All right, so we're gonna get our 14mm, and we're gonna break this loose. Next one is the 14mm down on the bottom half of the alternator, so we're gonna go ahead and break that loose. So at this point, this bolt up here and this bolt down here are out, so now we should be able to jiggle the alternator out. I got my gloves on because this alternator is very dirty. So what you want to do is kind of grab it from both sides, and you're going to come back here. Now the top one's pretty easy, so remember that. The bottom one was definitely tricky, and yeah, it's gonna fight me out. So I'm gonna use a pry bar like this right here. It's got the flat edge. I'm just gonna use it to try to pry up against the side of the engine. So, and you just want to do a little bit on each side. I'm just gonna pry against the exhaust header here. Yeah, it's coming right out. Should be able to pull it out now. So again, oh, there you go. So what you want to do is you want to pick the alternator up and place it on top of the engine here. The only problem right now is this bracket is in the way. So I suggest you remove this bracket. I think it's looks like two 14mm, but I'll double check to be sure. And then once you get this bracket off, then you'll have all the clearance you need. Because if you try to do it as is, you're going to hit the dipstick, the oil dipstick on this side. You got refrigerant line on this side. You really don't want to move this too much. And then down below, you got your coolant line and everything. So just take this bracket off. It's like 2 bolts, comes out, and it makes it easier so you can just pick it up and put it on top. All right, so just going to zip this with a little bit of WD-40. See if I can break this bad boy loose. All right. Still got a lot of room here, so you don't want to back yourself into a corner. All right. Here's the other bolt. All right, so now that we got the bolts out and we got the bracket out, we have enough room. We can actually pull this up. But you want to be careful. There's a wire that comes down past the alternator. You just want to not pull that so tight. And then you just simply lift it up. And we're going to set it right here on top. There you go. All right, so I just wanted to show again. I just took this clip out. It goes right in this little bracket here, and yeah, that goes down to the AC compressor. But I figured to take it out because what I didn't want it to be so tight. It was kind of taut there, so I wanted to have a little bit of give, so that way when I start taking out these bolts, I don't want to tear or break any wires there. But other than that, we're done up top. We're gonna go ahead and go down underneath. We got some bolts to take out down there, so let's go. All right, so now we're underneath the car, and as you can see, there's a hanger here for the exhaust manifold, and that's connected by a 14mm bolt right there. That's connected to the block. And then down here, there's another bolt. I think this is like a 13 millimeter. I'll double check to be sure. But we want to remove these two bolts to make way to get the exhaust manifold off. There you go. Sorry guys. You can take this one off if you want. I think it's a 13 millimeter, like I said before. I'm just going to leave it on because I'm going to take the whole thing off anyway. And so the next step is WD-40 these, let these soak for a few minutes, and then we're going to start taking them off. The threads don't look too bad, honestly. They don't look too shabby. Like I said, I replaced this like about a year and a half ago. So yeah, these are the threads after about a year and a half. So not too bad. All right, so 17 millimeter, got my breaker bar, and we're just gonna break it loose. Make sure you got a hex head that has like 6 sides and not 12, because this is a really tricky spot where you can actually strip your nuts if they're rusted enough. All right, so we got that loose. Turn. Yeah, so that's one. Breaker bar here makes all the difference. Now, if yours is rusted out more so than mine, I suggest WD-40, grab a wire brush, and kind of go over these threads as much as you can. If that doesn't work, they have nut or bolt extractors where if you strip this nut, basically what happens is there's something that you can put over. It's like a socket, but as you turn it, it actually grips the nut even tighter, so that way you can hopefully turn it out. If that don't work, then last resort is heat. Apply as much heat as you can on these rusted bolts, and that should help help loosen it over time. But yeah, just try to do the best you can. Try to get these nuts off. Now that we got them loose, I'm going to use my electric ratchet and get these off. Well, actually took off my whole stud here, as you can see, but that's okay. It's all going to get replaced anyway. Now that you got all the bolts out, this should come loose and this should get out of the way for you, so that would free up the bottom half. Alright, so let's go back up to the top. Alright, so the next step we want to do is remove the O2 sensor. So when I replaced this one a long time ago, actually no, it wasn't. It was when I did the exhaust last time. I put anti-seize on here, so this shouldn't be very hard to take off. Alright, so I've got my O2 sensor, and we're going to go ahead, and you want to allow the wire to go in like so. And then once you got it in, we're going to go ahead and break it loose. Alright, so now I should be able to just turn it out by hand. Okay, so here's the O2 sensor. Alright, so all you got to do is get your flathead screwdriver, and you want to hug the side of the plug, and then just put it in there. Okay, and then you should be able to just pull out. Alright, so we're at the point now where we got everything else off. The only thing we have to do left is remove these 5 nuts that actually go into the engine block itself. Alright, so we're going to give it a little spray. Alright, so at this point, grab your 17 millimeter, and we're going to break these all loose. Great. All right, so now that we got all the bolts off, we have the O2 sensor off, we have the hanger bolt off, we have the 3 bolts, or studs I should say, down below the intermediate pipe off. This exhaust manifold should come right off. All right, there you go. All right, also, don't forget to take the old exhaust gasket off. That's that. All right, so here's the old exhaust manifold, and I got this one from CPSP. I think it was on eBay. I bought it for about $100 a couple years ago. Installed it about a year and a half ago. It's been good to me, honestly. I haven't had any exhaust leaks, haven't had any smells coming into the car. No check engine light, so the O2 sensor is working perfectly fine. The catalytic converter itself, we can take a peek in here. You can see the catalytic converter itself is still good. Now it's time to get the new one out. All right, so here is the new one. As you can see, this is the old one I just took out. This is the new one. Same deal. Overall, this one did do the job. It did well. The new one is exactly the same as I suspected. So at this point, we're going to start prepping this one. This one can go away. We don't need you anymore. But oh yeah, let me get the hardware out, which is all right here. So the first step is going to be removing this bung from the exhaust manifold. This is going to be for your O2 sensor. This is a Torx T50. I couldn't find my hex, so I'm just going to use that in place. But basically, should just break loose. Yep, like that. And then you can just take this thing off. This is just to keep the threads safe for storing and shipping. So I got my O2 sensor here, and basically I'm going to go ahead and take my nylon brush, and I'm just going to brush these threads out. I'm going to get the old anti-seize off here. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean, but try to get as much as you can of the old one. If you have an O2 sensor problem, like say you got a check engine light, this O2 sensor is not working, now's the perfect time to replace it. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and apply some anti-seize, and then we're going to put it inside the exhaust manifold. All right, and I am using Permatex anti-seize lubricant. This basically makes it so when you put the O2 sensor back, you tighten it down. The next time you have to remove it, or the next time someone else has to remove it, it's not seized to these threads because of the extreme heat and the extreme temperature swings that goes from hot to cold, when it cools off. This is very susceptible to seizing, so make sure you put this stuff on. And what you're going to do is put on about that much, okay, and then you're just going to start and just try to go around the threads. Don't go up and put it inside the holes of the O2 sensor. That won't be good. But just go around like so, like that, and then you just want to wipe off any excess, just so it doesn't get too messy. Now that we got the anti-seize all on, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to put it inside the exhaust manifold, and we're just going to thread it in by hand, like so. You want to wipe off any excess anti-seize, okay, like so. Basically, I'm just putting it in there by hand, finger tight. Once I get it installed into the car, it'll be a lot easier to tighten this correctly than trying to hold it down and tighten it down correctly and get the table shaking and everything moving. All right, so now that we got the O2 sensor on, we're going to go ahead and put the studs in. So when I got the hardware for this particular exhaust manifold, it looks like this. This bigger thread pitch is a 1.5. This is a 1.25 pitch. So it's supposed to screw in like such, but it doesn't go. It pretty much stops here. This should go in by hand, by the way. But when I use the 1.25, it's able to go in completely. Like so. So that tells me that the hardware kit that they sent me was probably not the correct one, or a bad one, or maybe they made the manifold wrong. So anyway, what I did is I went and got some new studs. This is a 1.25 on both sides, and this smaller thread size will go right into the manifold. So we're going to go ahead and just screw that in. All right, and that's all you got to do. Just screw these studs in by hand. All right, so those three are in. Now the last one, this is going to be for the exhaust hanger. All you got to do is just turn over the manifold. Now this is the same deal, same stud. So I ordered a pack of 5 off of Amazon, same threads, 1.25. You're actually going to screw this in the opposite way. All right, so that's in. Now for this hanger, there should be like a large washer. Put it there, and then this side with the elongated opening, that would go in here, and then there's a thick washer. Okay, these parts here actually came from my old exhaust manifold, so I just used them since the hardware kit didn't actually come with these parts. So once you get these installed like this, what you're going to do is just put your nut on, and I'm not going to tighten it down all the way. I'm just going to kind of loosely have it, so when I'm installing it, I can turn this or move this around as need be. So that will be that. Okay, so at this point, the manifold is ready to go. We got our studs in, hanger in, O2 sensor in place, so we're ready to go ahead and put it on. All right, so the next step is going to be to clean these studs off. So I use a steel wire brush, and you can just go over the threads. All right, so the last part is this steel manifold gasket. This is the one that I just took off from the existing exhaust manifold, but I'm going to go ahead and reuse it because it's in good shape. I just need to spray it down with some brake clean. All right, do some brake clean. All right. All right, so next step is you're going to take the exhaust manifold gasket and carefully slide it in over all the exhaust studs. There should be 5 of them. Just make sure they're all included. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the exhaust manifold in, and just make sure you line up all the studs like that, and it's in. All right, so once you got your exhaust manifold in, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take 5 of these nuts. So we're going to go ahead, finger tighten them in. All right, so next part is we need to install this ring gasket. That's why it's important to make sure that your exhaust manifold isn't like tightly snug, because you need room to wiggle to get the ring gasket on, and then to actually get the intermediate pipe or the down pipe on over the studs. So basically you just want to strong arm this. I'd say lift the exhaust manifold out and do your best just to line them up like that. All right, and then once you got it in, take our locking nuts and just gonna finger tighten those. All right, so now this is at least somewhat in place. You just need to focus on the exhaust hanger. All right, so I was trying to get this hanger lined up with the hole up there, but I had to actually take off these parts here in order to get the right angle on it. So I think what I'm gonna do is put the bolt up there first, and then I'll put this stuff back on. All right. Alright, it took me a second, but I got the bolt started, so I'm going to tighten that in by hand. I put the bolt into the engine block first, and then I put everything back here on the hanger like I showed you earlier. At this point, everything is loosely in place. We can begin tightening everything down. For the exhaust manifold, they're going to get tightened down to 44 foot-pounds of torque. And you want to start from the center and then kind of go out, and then lastly do the last two on the outside. We're going to go ahead and tighten this down. We're going to go ahead and tighten down the O2 sensor. That gets down to 38 foot-pounds of torque. Once you have the O2 sensor tightened down, we're going to go ahead and plug it in. And all you got to do is just line up those tabs and push in. Alright, so we got the exhaust manifold in. Everything's snug down and tight. O2 sensor is in place, plugged in. Make sure you have this wire kind of out of the way from the exhaust. The 3 studs down there with the nuts I got from the hardware store worked beautifully, so that's a good news. At this point, we're ready to put the alternator back in place, then put the serpentine belt back on and start it up. Because we took the bracket off, we have to actually lower the alternator back into near place and then put the bracket on. You don't want to do it the other way, because if you put the bracket on first, you're not going to get the alternator back down here without more heartache and pain. So make sure you lower the alternator back down, and then we're going to put the bracket on. Okay, so basically I got to line the alternator up like that, and once you get it lined up like this one up here, then just those 2 bolts go in. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and put the bolt in. Alright, and then we're going to tighten this down. Alright, so at this point we're going to go ahead and tighten this down, torque it down to spec. We're going to go ahead and put our grounding strap back in, snug it up. Alright, so next step, we're going to go ahead and put in the serpentine belt. And what I like to do with this is kind of feed it through from the top. When I get it in, I'm going to kind of put it over the alternator and then come underneath and pull it through. I got a Haynes manual, and this is for the 2.5 liter. So I'm just going to follow this and get the serpentine belt around. Make sure you have the ribs of the belt down to fit the ribs like you see here on the alternator. Okay, so it goes like that. And then I'm just going to snake this around, and I'll be right back. So all you gotta do is grab your idler pulley right here. This is the crankshaft pulley. All right, so this is your tensioner pulley. You're going to grab this tensioner pulley and you're going to tighten it. Okay, and then you should be able to finagle the belt back on. Make sure that's on good, like so. And then once you get it on, just let release, and you're done. Now that we got the serpentine belt on, we can go ahead and put the coolant reservoir back. There's this metal kind of piece sticking out. You want to slide that on into this cavity. It slides right into this piece. And then this 110mm bolt here. Just tighten that down by hand. And then last but not least, this hose goes over here. Goes on top where the radiator cap is, and we just get a little pliers there and just squeeze that around. All right, so next piece we want to add is the intake track. That's on. All right, so before I put the engine cover back on, I tightened up the battery. I'm going to go ahead and start it, and then we're just going to make sure that everything looks good down there with the exhaust manifold. Alright, all that smoke is just burn off from oil and liquid rinse and everything like that. Perfectly normal so far. We're basically going to heat cycle this all the way through until it reaches operating temperature, then shut it down. Just make sure nothing crazy is happening, everything's good. So far so good. Alright, looks like the smoke has pretty much subsided by now. So, still a little bit of smoke, but it's definitely gone down. Alright, that's it for this video. The smoke went away. I put the engine cover back on. Everything else is good to go. If you like our work, go ahead, click that like, subscribe, and notification bell for more Trick Shift Garage videos. We'll see you on the next one.